Welcome to the Talent Learning Show podcast series, episode 67 with independent learning tech analyst John Lay. Today I interview Tamer Ali, CEO and founder of Authentic Learning Labs, about API-Centric learning delivery. Find more of our fiercely independent content at talentlearning.com. Well, welcome back, listeners, and thank you very much for tuning in to another episode. On this show, I am fortunate to interview the senior executives and customers of the world's most prominent learning system solution providers. Today's no different, as we have return guest, CEO of Authentic, here to help explore the complex but increasingly popular concept of API-centric learning delivery deployed by high-end training companies, content providers, customer education providers, among others. What the heck is API-centric learning delivery? Well, in maybe an incorrect nutshell, it's a way to skip the LMS and deliver uber personalized learning content. But I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that. And that's why we're lucky to have Tamer here to explain it all to us today, make this complex topic simple. Tamer, welcome. Thanks for coming back to the Talent Learning Show. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here, John. Nice to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Too. Yeah, you've been here a ton of times. Encourage listeners to go to our podcast page, go back and listen to some of our previous interviews on analytics and AI. Tamer and his team is like on the front of the industry, always pushing with the high-end organizations, doing the cutting edge stuff. And then eventually the industry learns that and adopts it into learning systems and the rest of it. And so every time we have Tamer here, we're learning about something that we don't know anything about, including today. This is a kind of a new concept, even for me, as I try to stay on top of the innovation curve. But Tamer, in case somebody hasn't been following this podcast the whole time, why don't you just take a short minute here and give us a snapshot of your company and where you guys fit into the learning systems marketplace?
Thank you, John. Authentic is learning as a service. You know, we hear all these things now with, hardware as a service and taxi cab as a service and dispatch as a service. You mentioned Uber. We're a complete learning tech service on demand. We have an award-winning platform and a team that we simply describe it as like a SWAT team that comes in when this mission-critical learning, something that has to go and it has to be deployed, and it's very important, whether it's a certification course or it's a for-profit publisher that needs content out, needs maybe a platform with it, and the resources are stretched with their own operations, or they don't have the resources. We come in, we fly in essentially, and for us to get the work done and the speed and the efficacy that we think is due to the client, we bring our own tech. We'll integrate with the tech and the investments the client has, and we'll make it seamless. And where necessary, we also build the courses with the client's key stakeholders. So, it's almost a complete service. And then we said, okay, you need to erect a new course and you need some of our help. You may need to migrate some of it. We come in, and that's what really Authentic does. Do we have an LMS platform? Yes. Do we have course development service? Yes. So it's and then, the client will determine, to dial up or down those services.
Yeah, excellent. There's not really much like that in the industry. Typically, these types of services are either provided by the organizations themselves or by the LMS vendor. But as it turns out, in practical life, there's a gap there. There's a delta between lack of service and not enough time, and some technical challenges with not the right personnel. And
right.
Where those three things intersect, that's when they call you guys to do it. And one of the things they call you for is because of your expertise in API-centric learning delivery. Now, you heard my somewhat probably lame definition up front. Why don't you give us the professional definition? What does that mean? Flesh it out.
That was great. And I'll just try to add some more color to that. Is we operate with a pretty simple premise and try to stay away from jargon, but really is that, mature and growing organizations, companies that deal with learning, whether it's part of their, that is their operations, they're an education company, or they're a publisher, or they're a major L&D program, they know how they want to use learning technology. They know what it is like to work well, to look good, and seamlessly integrate with their investments. And they're beyond the point of just saying, I got to go get a software in a box and place it and then use, what the software vendor will have is, a limited set of APIs to do certain things. What these organizations are really seeking with for us and from us and similar organizations is an embedded experience where the learning is happening within the context of the need, whether it's in the infrastructure, they have like CRM, Salesforce, what's integrated with their key systems of record, like e-commerce. What they're looking for is something that is not halfway, and they've met a threshold in terms of the experiences with the other platforms, and they're typically at their second or third generation platform. And that's where we come in, and we don't typically have to. We don't do wholesale change. We integrate with the key components they have for the best experience, and obviously to be mindful of the budgets going on.
And so the opposite of API-centric learning delivery, would that be, lacks a term, but normal content delivery?
Yeah.
You can tell I'm a marketer and a writer here.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to think it's simplified terms, but, we look at it like, Legos and a toy out of the box, right? If I describe to you what a Lego set could do versus a standard box, it's like a shrink wrap toy. There's a limited set of needs that toy will do and address, and that's okay. I mean, that perfectly for certain kids, and some adults even, a toy like a car or a doll would suffice. And I'll try to stay away from the toy analogy too much, but with Lego bricks, it really addresses the advanced imaginations and needs of advanced builders. And so for some people who have already built an experience, especially with the web, and where you have mobile and devices and a deep website that promotes and offers a learning and describes it, people don't want to detach the learners from those experiences in many cases. And therefore, an API-centric model means that we can build the components, and you mentioned headless, and there the concept of headless is really one and the same, as saying you can have all this without a detached experience from what you're used to. The box toy model is what most providers are offering, and there's nothing wrong with that. What it means is it serves a certain set of requirements. In our world, those sets of requirements are much more deep and wide, meaning, we have to have an integration with not only the web experience, but the platforms that drive that web experience, commerce, etc. And therefore, those need a much more diverse and mature set of APIs. Where you see the other vendors, it's totally fine, but those APIs are typically, we have APIs, we have SSO, we'll send you when the courses are complete. And for many cases, that's okay. Our system is not built to address the 90%, right? At least right now. It's for the 10% that are the elite performers or the growing organizations. And we'll talk about, I think we can also talk about the simple models as well. It's not just for advanced users. You can also have very simple needs that need to be addressed that a standard LMS implementation cannot, because you still have to go implement it. You have to have a software implementation and investment. Whereas, how about if you just want to launch one course? Do you really need an LMS? And our question is no. The answer to that question usually is no. And so usually we can, have people authenticate in various ways to our platform. Facebook ID, LinkedIn, social sign-on, password, no problem. And you just launch a course. There are organizations who just want to deliver it through Microsoft Teams or Slack, no problem. And those are the problems we're trying to solve. And so there are maturing groups and large groups that need, way beyond that that shrink wrapped box toy model, and they need much more diverse set of components that they can build into the learning. Versus, the smaller groups that say, look, or they might be large, but they have a certain need, and they can't meet it with their existing investments.
So normally, just to catch everybody up, if you had a normal learning management system and you had a content business and somebody bought that content, then after they buy that content, you kind of behind the scenes create an account for them and pass them to a completely different experience, an LMS experience that most likely isn't aligned to the same website and marketing experience. So it's kind of like they go to a different place to launch and track the learning, after they purchase, but then through time they're back on the marketing site, they're getting back, so you're basically maintaining, a couple of different environments. And so, my understanding kind of that awkwardness is, when that becomes mission critical and that awkwardness is unacceptable, that's a main driver saying, okay, now we need a better API-centric approach here to deploy this content specifically, or in this application, or in the software, proprietary software application, or in Teams, as you said. And so that's where it separates, in my opinion. It's from a typical LMS,
That's
where
correct, John.
they really want you to come to their island with that. So the key challenges. So that's like one key challenge of,
That's right.
where that user experience is so important. What would be other reasons that would push you to that, or why you want to invest in that from these people? What other challenges are they trying to solve?
Yeah, spot on, John. I mean, for user experience, and it's almost like it trickles down from user experience. User experience that you talked about it, right? These clunky, disjointed experiences, poor navigation schemes, too many clicks. I think they use the word friction these days, right?
Yeah.
And then how about systems talking to each other? If the systems don't talk to each other, it also affects user experience. Oh, I just bought this course. Why isn't it available in my learning section? Why aren't my enrollments showing up? Typically I've seen, and we see this a lot and anecdotally is, the systems are talking slowly, or there's some batch process behind the scenes. You have these big organizations that, handle, they have this significant investment in a tool like Salesforce, but behind the scenes, it's feeding other systems like the LMS, and that communication between Salesforce and LMS takes hours or days. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but what it is, it's not real time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, the communications ultimately affect the user experience and also other things, right? So the systems talking to each other, like the CRM talking to the LMS, the SSO, it should be by default, but not only sharing, not only just talking, but sharing the right information. For example, in the CRM's case, is if that information is not just, hey, this person's okay to get in, but is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this person, and then you could personalize the experience. That's the kind of
Mm-hmm.
level of depth that we go into, is that this person should get subscription level A versus this person, they're a premium customer. They should get everything in that course. We can handle that. So systems talking to each other really ultimately bring up and address the first point you mentioned, user experience. And then the third is aesthetics, is that a lot of these groups, they come to us because great system they have internally. It's serving, there's a cornerstone or, a platform similar to it, and whether it's in higher ed or whatever, or it's Moodle, and it's serving them just fine. But there's an audience, or there's a group that has, much more specific tastes, or they're isolated where they can't get to it. The aesthetics matter. This is another section where we get involved, where we can help in the actual visual experience too, because being headless, we can present beautiful modern user interfaces. And,
Mm-hmm.
we have our own default, and those are styled. They can be, modern style sheet driven, mobile and responsive screens that would, handle any of the, the discriminating tastes of current, modern consumers. And likewise, data, with these systems talking to each other, the data that's generated in our systems is greater than what we're seeing in others. Usually you see at the most, time and participation and some kind of score. But in our world, when we're deploying a course through Simpatico, we're seeing the richest level of data that these customers have seen, similar to, and can be the same as XAPI, but we can give them, if they can't handle XAPI, very similar API-rich analytics, down to the page level of what people are doing, the time and videos, what they're clicking and what they're completing are all part of essentially like heartbeats that we could share with the customer. And,
Mm-hmm.
and that stores into, systems, and it can also present ways for the person to get personalized experiences as well. So,
Yeah.
these key areas, and it also usually ties to the user experiences, right? It's if you get these right, the user is the key thing, and the key the recipient of all the benefits. And then I think the last one is access. Is a lot of these organizations are trying to give access to someone or an audience that they can't serve with their current way, whether A, they don't have an LMS and they don't really need one. They're just trying to launch one major program and it's through their website, or they're selling to customers, like you mentioned earlier, and they would prefer that the customer access it from their own LMS. What I think the industry calls syndication. That is also built into our capabilities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is it you mentioned Simpatico? So Simpatico, just to define that, so that would be the learning experience platform. So this is the delivery platform that you use. The flip side of the delivery platform is kind of the content assembly tool or authoring tool. Is that right? Is that
Yes, that's right.
that so you basically the flip side of the LXP is the ability to, I guess, skip the need of an articulate or rise or
Yeah,
Camtasia,
you
and
can.
then develop that in there. And then you were talking before about variations of a course, premium and things like that. Can you expand on what you mean right there and how that fits into this whole topic? Like, tell us about a scary use
Yeah.
case, just to
Yeah, we
frame
get
it.
multiple types of use cases where basically you have source content, and that content could be an HTML that's built in the tool in Simpatico, where you're basically building course pages, HTML, video, audio clips, no problem. We can also we play neutral to this, and we as practitioners and believers in the space, we want them to be able to build in the tools they're comfortable with. So, you mentioned Articulate or Captivate or any of these tools. They can generate SCORMs or AICC or XAPI and store it. So Simpatico can store it, manage it, organize it, and deliver it and track it. So it becomes, in the olden days, they used to call that learning content management, but the content is managed there too. And basically it's organized so you can tag it, or, classify it and use it when you need. And by doing that, we provide the capability of layouts and wrappers so you can present that content in the way you wish. Many of the organizations, almost by all means, every one that we find, they have the need to diversify their content. They like Articulate for specific needs, but they also want to build in video and audio, and those tools are not really optimized for them. They've done things in the most recent times, but they're not really the best to do that. So they'll use our tool to build the videos. And we for AI generated transcription and other AI powered tools behind the scenes for video. So I'll have a video very much like what you see in Vimeo or YouTube, advanced video playback. But then they'll wrap SCORM with it, and they'll put assessment in it. And by the means, they also want to do something where they offer live or complementary learning, like a chat or a Zoom session like we're on right now. And so it'll authenticate participants into that. So Simpatico will be kind of like the template, but then what the template can house and present is really up to the client's imagination and resource limitations. So they could basically say, I want to take, and this is very much the common model, I'll build a lot of it in the tool, like the lessons and the basically the readable material, and I'll build videos and some of the interactions like quizzing and flashcard. But then they'll import articulate elements and then connect a Zoom tool or a live chat into the platform as well. What that allows them to do is have one single platform that launches all this and organizes it with that allows them and affords them the flexibility to build in the tools they want.
Wow, cool. That's really, really advanced and interesting. You're right. It is almost what they called an LCMS back in the
Back
olden
then,
days,
yeah.
where you just pump the content in and then you could display it, for web or for PDF or, and use that same content and really get the horsepower out of it. That's advanced. Most LMSs, not all, but most LMSs are about assembling contents from other places, content assembly. There's increasingly more for sure authoring capabilities. but it's always at, I think, more of a base level. A base level. It's never designed to really support these scenarios.
That's
So
right.
there's this gap in the industry between what the high end needs and what the LMSs for the masses can provide. That's for sure. But it's probably realistic, as we were wrapping up this interesting session. It's probably realistic that there's a lot of organizations out there that probably need and would benefit from an API centric approach, but for one reason or another, they're stuck on an approach from the past. Before that was possible, and so knowing or wanting something and actually getting it funded and getting your organization to budget it and make it happen and make a priority are obviously two different things. Wishful thinking and reality come to bang against each other in that part. So, from an advice standpoint, how, if you were in that situation, how should they define the problem and articulate the cost benefits in a way that they could get this project sold inside to take that next step from being in the toy box to your to the advanced Lego stage?
Yeah, it's a great point, John. I mean, I
It's a
think
hard question.
it is, but I think that with these types of things, it's probably best to just draw it out. And what we've tried to do is take a diagram and put the systems of record. Usually, the CRM, SSO is easy. You have the CMS, whatever's delivering the website, CMS. And, you have marketing automation. You have the LMS and content sources. And you just plot it all on. Even just take it on a live session like this. It show them what they have as a landscape, and loop them, show them the different loops and the flows of the participants. Very visually, you could see all the things that a person has to go through to get the content or access their learning, and when does that report back. And then you start slicing away from the problem and say, okay, where do we want to attack? Where are the big friction points? I'll use the term, I think these days, friction is popular, is take those away. You could say that we're going to put a solution right in place here, and how do we inject it into these places where there's flow issues? That is not a very difficult exercise, and it helps you visualize without 10 pages of requirements and technical specs, but just take it as a visual, pragmatic view and say, okay, I need to talk. I need to, when the participants log in, I need to do the following things, or this is what I need to share. And that's just usually done on a flow chart, a very simple one, without going into too much jargon or tech. But let's just try to reduce the number of steps and clicks, and also increase the amount of information flow and the the quality of the learning experience, and what can we do to improve it. That typically is an exercise that we enjoy, just to show them that it's possible, and that you don't need a, what is it, the veritable pulling the tablecloth from the table. You don't have to create disruption. You could do this by injecting it. And I think nowadays, with the state of the economy, and most organizations have made a significant investment in their learning tech and their the web platforms. What we're proposing is not a transformative change immediately. You put it in and start adopting it and solving the problem. For example, you place in Simpatico and say, okay, for a certain group of users, I want them to launch this content from my existing LMS, but it's going to go through Simpatico. No problem. Check. That's days of implementation versus months. Then you could say, well, I want to decommission a few. I mean, we talk to groups that have 10, 15 different learning implementations. Let's take 5 of the worst ones that are causing you so much headache and a lot of hosting cost. Let's take those, take one at a time and reduce them. So in many cases, we'd like to do that flow chart and also do a cost benefit analysis and reduce their cost. Obviously we price to value, and we try to work out things that will help model it. And that's another component of our offering, is that this is not something that we come in and say, okay, here's our manual, here's our software, and we'll call you for a Zoom training in 5 days or whatever, right? It's not like that. These are relationships, and we've been in this industry for a while. These relationships last beyond 10 years many times. Implementations that are successful should. And so what we want to do is say, if we do this right, we're going to bring some tools. We're going to bring our team, and we have a bench, and we have when we have a significant scale to do migrations of content and data. And we'll help you with any aspect of this. And let's do this fast, and release in 3 months, and have iterative releases in 1 month at a time, but to really have a very targeted, refined goal. especially
Wow.
with cost and flow.
hmm Wow. Excellent. Excellent. So, yeah, flowchart it is. Listeners, I've watched this process in action with some Tamers and I's joint contact or clients recently. So he's practicing what he preaches. But all those points of friction, I guess, let me just pile on just a little bit to Tamer's advice there. All these points of friction cost costs the organization in terms of learners not expanding, not using the software, not renewing the next year, calling into technical support or customer support because they're having problems with these friction points and clicks. And so, the smartest organizations that I run into, figure out how to tie those friction points to what it's actually costing the organization. And the flip side of that is reducing those clicks on what it's actually benefiting the organization from a fiscal standpoint. In addition to sunsetting some of the systems like Tamer was describing of saving costs that way, you can also add increased revenue in different areas by that lack of friction. And together, you bring those two pieces together, you've got the funding now to start putting these pieces in that iterative way that Tamer was describing. And that's how organizations do, because they've got these businesses running. They can't turn it off and redo things and turn it back on. So it's got to be that iterative approach to slide it in. So wow, fascinating conversation, Tamer.
Thank you,
It's
John.
great to have
As
you
always.
back on the show, always talking about cutting edge things. I understand what it is and why you would need it now. The API-centric learning or headless LMS is kind of the almost a synonym, but not quite. But it's understand why you want to use it, how you want to take it to the next level. What are the business reasons for doing that? What's some advice on getting started and getting out of that budget gate? That's a good episode. We covered a lot. So Tamer, thanks for coming in and have a great day.
You too, John. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. Listeners, thanks for tuning into another episode. You can visit talentedlearning.com for tons more independent analysis like this on all things extended enterprise and learning technology. Learning. You can also go to Tamer's website at authenticlabs.io and read more about LXP and headless and API-centric solutions there, and keep on getting smarter in that. And there you have it. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next Talent to Learning Show podcast series.